All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. We've got a special event for you today. Going to be round two. I've got two researchers here for the murder of Officer J D Tippit, who was killed allegedly by Lee Harvey Oswald on the afternoon of 22nd November 1963. There will be a link put at the bottom of the page for the first debate for listeners who want to hear. This will be an untimed debate. There will be 14 topics, 7 for each person. We will rotate them in order. There will be an opening statement given and closing statements by the two researchers. With me, I've got Matt Dowdett from Dallas, Texas, and Bill Brown from Cincinnati, Ohio. Matt, Bill, how are you? And thank you both for coming on.
I'm doing good, thanks. Yep, doing good. Thanks, Chris.
All right, at this time, Bill Brown, do you have an opening statement?
Well, basically, I just want to lay out the scenario. Everybody knows that on November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, in Dealey Plaza. But unless you're a student of the case or a researcher, you really don't know that a police officer was also killed in Oak Cliff, approximately 2 to 3 miles away from Dealey Plaza. So basically, we have Lee Harvey Oswald leaving the depository building. He catches a bus, gets off the bus because it stopped in traffic. He boards a cab, takes the cab to Oak Cliff, goes to his rooming house. And I'm just kind of skipping the specifics right now. But basically, he goes to the rooming house. And next thing we know, a police officer is shot near the intersection of 10th and Patton and Oak Cliff. And so a lot of people aren't aware that a police officer was killed that day. And I think Matt and I are here today to discuss the shooting death of that police officer and to debate. We're going to discuss the shooting death, and we're going to debate a few of the issues that I think point to Oswald's guilt for the death of J D Tippit. That was the police officer. And Matt is going to basically argue that someone besides Lee Harvey Oswald was responsible for the murder of J D Tippit. I'm assuming that's what Matt's here to do.
Matt, do you have an opening statement?
No, I don't. I think my opening statement from round one is good. So I'm ready to jump into it.
Bill, the first topic goes to you, and that will be the timeline from the depository to the rooming house.
Okay. Well, basically, a lot of conspiracy advocates like to argue that Oswald could not have got to 10th and Patton by 1:14, 1:15, which was the time that I believe the shooting occurred of J D Tippit. So to get him at 10th and Patton, 1:14, 1:15, we got to back up a little bit and get him to the rooming house at a reasonable time where he can leave the rooming house and then walk to 10th and Patton and be there in time. So basically, in 1964, the Secret Service and the FBI, they reconstructed Oswald's steps. This was with the help of Cecil McWaters, the bus driver, and William Whaley, the cab driver. And this was an attempt to determine the absolute earliest that Oswald could have reached the rooming house, okay? And based on McWaters' statement of where it was that Oswald boarded the bus, because we know Oswald boarded the bus because he had McWaters' specific bus transfer, and McWaters said that he issued the transfer to only one woman and only one man. And Oswald walked about 7 blocks east, this is from the depository, into the downtown area after he left the depository. And this is within 2.5 to 3 minutes of the shooting. And Cecil McWaters said, "So I gave her a transfer and opened the door, and she was going out. The gentleman I had picked up about 2 blocks back asked for a transfer and got off at the same place in the middle of the block where the lady did. It was the intersection near Lamar Street. It was near Poydras and Lamar Street." Now, that's what Cecil McWaters said. So they concluded, based on what McWaters told them, along with the Secret Service agents and the FBI agents walking the route in an average time of about 6.5 minutes, that Oswald boarded the bus around 12:40 near the intersection of Field Street and Elm Street. And then after being on the bus for no more than, say, four minutes or so, Oswald got off the bus near Lamar Street and Elm Street, and he asked for the transfer as he got off the bus. And so now we have Oswald leaving the bus around 12:44. And Oswald then walked 3 to 4 short blocks to the Greyhound station where he boarded Whaley's cab. And this has Oswald entering the cab roughly at 12:48. They then, with Whaley, they reconstructed the cab ride from the Greyhound station to the intersection of Beckley and Neely. Now, Oswald got out of the cab on Beckley just north of the intersection with Neely, okay? And they concluded using a stopwatch that the cab ride took 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So now we have Oswald exiting Whaley's cab on Beckley between 12:53 and 12:54, and still using a stopwatch. They concluded that it was a 5 minute and 45-second walk from the point that Oswald exited the cab back to the rooming house. So I think Oswald got to the rooming house between 12:58, 12:59, and was back in his room just long enough to grab a jacket before hurrying out the door, zipping up the jacket as he went out. So I have Oswald leaving the rooming house around 12:59 to 1 o'clock.
Okay, Matt.
We discussed the timing last time, so I think that was really good. So what we did last time. So next topic.
Well, does that mean that you agree that Oswald left the rooming house, like I just said? Are you agreeing with me? He left the rooming house around 12:59 to 1 o'clock is when he went out the front door?
No.
Matt, do you have a response?
No, not really. I believe that Oswald arrived at 1 p.m. and stayed there 4 or 5 minutes, and then several minutes later was seen at a bus stop, according to his housekeeper. And yeah.
Well, but in my opinion, so why are you saying several minutes later he was seen standing at the bus stop?
That's what she said, quote, several minutes later.
Okay, and how long do you take several minutes to be?
Well, about 2 minutes would be a couple minutes or a few minutes, so several minutes, like let's say about 5 minutes.
And your expression, you're familiar with the expression a figure of speech. You're familiar with that.
Yeah, so that's an excuse that you're giving right now. I trust.
No, it's not an excuse because Roberts said also that he was back there just long enough to grab a jacket.
She said that. She said that later.
Well, she did say it, though, right? So you agree she said it, right?
Yes, but I'm talking about what she said originally.
I basically feel that several minutes, a few minutes, a couple minutes, a minute or two, all that stuff is a figure of speech, and it's not meant to be taken literal. What is meant to be taken literal is when she said he was back there just long enough to grab a jacket. That's not a figure of speech. That's a literal description of the length of time that he was back in his room.
I disagree.
So I have Oswald arriving at the rooming house 12:58, 12:59, going back to his room, back there long enough to grab a jacket, and going back out the door. Probably obviously grabbed his revolver as well. And he goes back out the door, and I think by 1 o'clock, he's leaving the rooming house.
Okay.
All right, guys, then the next one's going to go to Matt. Matt, the description of the killer.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about day one descriptions. This is what was said on the day of the assassination about the Tippit killer. Not later. This is day one descriptions, all right? Okay, at 1:22 p.m., Officer Walker announced over the radio that the Tippit suspect was a, quote, white male about 30, 5'8", black hair, slender, wearing a white jacket, white shirt, and dark slacks. And that is volume 17, page 410. But Oswald was 24, brown hair, didn't own a white jacket, and wore a brown shirt. Let's go on. At 1:37 p.m., 15 minutes later, Officer Summers reported over the radio that a, quote, eyeball witness told him the killer was, quote, a white male, 27, 5'11", 165 pounds, black wavy hair, wear dark trousers, and a white shirt. But Oswald was 24, 5'9", 135 pounds, brown hair, and wearing a brown shirt. Sergeant Hill, he testified, quote, and for Officer Summers, that was volume 17, page 416. Sergeant Hill, he testified, quote, the first man that came up to me, he said, the man that shot him was a white male, about 5'10", weighing 160, 175 160 to 170 pounds, had on a jacket and a pair of trousers, brown, bushy hair. But Oswald was 135 pounds and had receding hair. Shall I go on? Officers Poe and Jez, their report from that day says that the killer had, quote, bushy hair, wearing a brown jacket. That's in the Dallas Municipal Archives. But Oswald had receding hair and didn't own a brown jacket. Witness Helen Markham, she told the FBI that day that the killer was, quote, 18, black hair, red complexion. That's CD5, page 79. This couldn't have been Oswald, who was 24, brown hair, pale complexion. Now, I could literally go on and not stop giving you descriptions of the killer.
Well, a couple things.
If I can finish, that do not match Oswald. So, what do you, okay?
Well, I mean, you've seen Oswald's. You've seen the famous photograph of Oswald in custody, sitting down in the chair with he's handcuffed and his hair's all, quite honestly, bushy. I can definitely see how Oswald, at that moment, could be described as having bushy hair. By the way, you mentioned the reports on the police tapes by Walker and also by Summers. Are you familiar with the witnesses who gave these descriptions to these two particular police officers? You know who the witnesses are? Matt?
Yeah, I'm here. Go on.
Who gave the description to Walker?
That was Warren Reynolds.
Right. And who gave the description to Summers?
Calloway.
Okay, just making sure you knew. So why didn't you mention, you realize that Calloway said that the suspect was wearing a Eisenhower type jacket.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And let me ask you one other question. And quite honestly, I wish that we could look up some legal case reviews, but how often do you think that one man alone robs a convenience store and there's the clerk as well as three customers in the convenience store, and they give four totally different descriptions to the police of what this man looked like as far as height, weight, age, hair color, hair description? You realize that, I mean, I can look this up when we're done, but I guarantee you it's at least half the time. Police officers, if they interview 3 or 4 witnesses, they're getting 3 or 4 different descriptions, yet they all saw the same man. So you're talking about, you just now gave these descriptions, and these descriptions that you just now read off are different from one description to the next, right?
No.
What's that?
No. These are so what you just said about, the whole, eyewitnesses and everything, so that's an excuse. I know that's what everyone throws out whenever, they don't have an answer for this, but what I read you was day one descriptions.
And that's fine. Okay, so do me a favor, if you don't mind. Can you read the Walker description and the Summers description again?
White male, about 30, black hair, wearing a white jacket, white shirt, and dark slacks. It's volume 17, page 410. But again, as I said, Oswald was 24, brown hair, didn't own a white jacket, and wore a brown shirt. Not Oswald.
And what about Summers?
Summers told it, it says right here, a white male, 27, 5'11", 165 pounds, black wavy hair, white shirt. But Oswald was 24, 5'9", 135 pounds, brown hair, and wearing a brown shirt. I could literally go on forever on these descriptions, and I'm waiting.
Yeah, now the Walker report, did he give the height? If he did, I missed it. What was the height?
The height was 5'8".
That's what I thought. So are you telling me that Calloway and Warren Reynolds saw 2 different men?
No.
All right. Well, then you're proving my case. So basically, Warren Reynolds is telling Walker that the guy was 5'8", about 30 years old, and Ted Calloway is telling Summers the guy was 27 and 5'11", 5'11". So you're proving my case that this 2 different witnesses can describe one man in 2 different manners. It doesn't mean a thing. It literally means nothing.
So the only thing right in there is the height for what Officer Walker said. So everything else does.
But you just told me that you believe that Calloway and Warren Reynolds saw the same man, and you just now gave me a description that Warren Reynolds gave to Walker and that Ted Calloway gave to Summers.
So the only thing that matches is white male and the height for Walker. Whoop-de-doo. Okay.
So one witness has the guy 5'11", the other witness has the guy 5'8".
Yeah. So
one witness has the guy 30 years old, the other witness has the guy 27 years old. All right.
Yeah.
You're proving you don't understand what I'm saying here. You're proving my point that these two guys saw the same man, yet they described him differently. So therefore, if we know that two witnesses can describe the same man completely different, then what's it matter?
They're not describing him differently. They both said he was wearing black hair. They both said he was almost 30.
No, they didn't. No. One said he was.
White shirt.
One said he was about 30. One said he was 27. One said he was 5'11". One said he was 5'8". My point is that two witnesses saw the same man and described him differently. It happens all the time, and it means absolutely nothing. And one other thing, you said that Oswald didn't own a white jacket.
Mm-hmm. You know, a white jacket.
Have you read Marina Oswald's Warren Commission testimony? I'm sure you have, right?
Yep.
She was shown Warren Commission Exhibit 162. Now that is the jacket. And she was asked if that was Lee's, and she said yes.
No, she said that's Lee's old shirt.
It doesn't matter. She was shown 162 and said it was Lee's, correct?
Again, it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me. The evidence, this matters.
Warren Commission Exhibit 162 is not an old shirt. She was shown Warren Commission Exhibit 162, and she said that was Lee's.
She said that was Lee's old shirt.
Correct. She said it was Lee's, and it was Warren Commission Exhibit 162. It doesn't matter if it was especially in her Russian language translation, shirt, jacket, it doesn't matter. She was shown Warren Commission Exhibit 162, and she said it belonged to Lee. These are facts that you can't change.
I give her again, she lives 15 minutes away from me, so but anyway, I'm
just saying, you said that Oswald didn't own a white jacket. You said that 5 minutes ago. And according to Marina Oswald, you most certainly did, because she identified Warren Commission Exhibit 162 as belonging to Lee.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I give and I think anyone does gives her very little credibility because she changed.
So now you're just making excuses.
Better let me finish, brother.
But so you're just making excuses.
No, I'm not making excuses.
Come on. You are talking over each other, so.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there have been lists made this is a basic fact how unreliable she is. I mean, literally, there's almost every topic. She changed her story in 1963 and 1964, and over the decades, over the past 50 plus years. So no, she's the least credible witness. So the only thing to. And we're talking about the jacket right now. We're talking about the descriptions of the killer. So if I can go on, and it's not an excuse. Everyone is.
When Warren Commission Exhibit 162 is put right in front of you, and you're asked if this belongs to your husband, and you say yes, and then 57 years later, 58 years later almost, someone doesn't like that answer, they're going to dismiss it. That's an excuse.
She didn't say yes. She said that's Lee's old shirt. It's not a shirt. It's a jacket. But anyway, let's move on again. Like I said, I can go on forever with these descriptions. Let's go to the closest witness, Donnie Benavides. He was 15 feet away, okay? He gave a very detailed description of the killer. Okay? Let me read it to you. He said that the killer was, quote, and again, he's 15 feet away in his pickup truck. He said that the killer was, quote, 5'11", had a complexion a little bit darker than average, a little bit ruddier than mine. Now, he's Mexican-American, so he said ruddier than mine, so that's important. Had dark hair that was a little bit curly, and he looked like he needed a haircut for about 2 weeks with the hairline that sort of went square instead of tapered off in the back. And that is volume 6, pages 450 to 451. That's closest that is not Oswald. That's a
Well,
very detailed description.
Oswald was wearing a jacket when he shot Tippit, a jacket that had a collar on it. Nobody could possibly describe whether Oswald's collar line was tapered or squared. It looked squared to Benavides because Oswald had a collar. Simple as that.
And he didn't describe his collar. He wasn't describing his collar.
He said the hairline was squared instead of tapered.
Yeah, hairline.
And to a guy wearing a hairline is he's talking about the collar line in the back is what he's talking about. That was squared instead of tapered. So a jacket with a collar is going to make somebody could have a mullet and it's going to look like squared when the jacket is on and the collar is outside of the hair. You don't know what the hairline looks like underneath the collar. Benavides saw the jacket, he saw the collar, he saw the hairline blocked off by the collar. The collar made it appear squared off.
So you're assuming this based on assuming that was the jacket that's in evidence, right?
Yeah, because that's what the evidence tells me.
You're not assuming that, taking into consideration that this was another guy and that he could see the back of his head.
Was the killer wearing a jacket? If it was Oswald or not, was the killer wearing a jacket, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, then it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the jacket in evidence or if we're talking about Oswald. We're talking about a killer wearing a jacket with a collar that could make him appear to have a squared off collar line in the back of his neck.
Again, I just read you this very detailed description, which which does not match Oswald. I mean,
okay, so now we have Calloway, Reynolds, and Benavides given three different descriptions, and they all three are talking about the same guy nevertheless. So what does it matter when people can give different descriptions? I go back to my convenience store scenario. If people can give different descriptions of a suspect, then why do you want to take one and rule it out in favor of the others? You have to do that. Otherwise, you got to say they're talking about three different men.
Again,
Reynolds, Calloway, and Benavides.
Again, you're making excuses. I read you directly from his sworn testimony, the closest witness. This does not match Oswald. He testified, quote, "I got a very good look. He said it twice at the killer.
Right.
And he gave this description, which I just said, and it does not match Oswald.
Do you know that? So listen to this. All right. That evening, the Dallas police sent officers to pick up Sam Ginyard, Ted Calloway, and Domingo Benavides. All three guys worked at the same place, to take them downtown to attend a lineup to see if they could identify the man they saw. Calloway and Ginyard went because they felt like they saw the guy well enough to make an identification if they were to see him in the lineup. You are aware that Benavides literally told the police that evening, "Hey, I'm not going downtown because I didn't get a good enough look at the guy to make an identification."
No, that's absolutely no. I knew you were going to say that. No, in his testimony, he said, "I got a good look, a very good look."
Matt, on November 22nd, 1963, he declined going to a lineup because he didn't feel like he got a good enough look at the guy.
That's what was
claimed. Why he didn't go to a
lineup? That's what was claimed, but that's not what was true. And first of all, as I said,
how are you going to prove that's not the truth? That's what he says.
You better let me finish. Okay. So in his testimony, he said, "I got, quote, a good look." Again, very good look at the killer. He gave this massive description that I just read you. So anyway,
then why would he turn down going to a lineup on November 22nd?
I'm glad you asked that. That is what is claimed. That's what is claimed, but that's not what is the truth. In 1960,
how do you know that's not the truth? Show me what you've seen, which proves that Benavides was never asked to attend a lineup.
You done?
Yeah, I want you to show me where it shows.
I'm trying to, but you keep talking.
Well, I'm asking you to show me, so show me.
Glad you asked. So in 1966, Mark Lane and Emil D'Antonio caught up with Donnie. They caught up with him and asked him whether he could identify the man who killed Tippit. Benavides replied, quote, "Of course. I was 10 or 15 feet away. Of course I could. I told that to the Dallas police, but they did not bring me to the lineup." That's amazing. So the Warner report quotes him as saying, "Oh, he said he couldn't get a good enough identification, so he declined to go to the lineup. But no, if you read his testimony, he said, I got a good look, very good look at the killer. And he gave this massive description, which I just read you. And he says, quote, yes, of course I could identify them, but they didn't bring me to the lineup. And
he was asked to attend the lineup, but he declined, Matt.
No, I just read to you his words. That's what was claimed. But if you this is what's important. You have to actually, never trust what a document or a report says. You always have to. It's always good to ask the actual eyewitness.
I agree.
Is this true? And they went to him. They went to him in Dallas, and they said, "Could you identify the man?" Because he says, "Yes, of course I could. I was 15 feet away." And to add to it, Mark Lane writes in his 1966 Playboy magazine interview, quote, he told me that on November 22nd, he told the Dallas police that the man who killed Officer Tippit was short and somewhat heavy. After he gave this description of, so also short and heavy. And we can get to that.
Okay, well, hold on a second now.
We can also talk about that right now if you want, short and heavy.
So wait a minute now. How come Warren Reynolds didn't tell Walker, or how come Ted Calloway didn't tell Summers that the guy was short and heavy? You've already agreed that all these guys saw the same guy.
Yeah. I'm
so
glad
now you have one guy describes him as short and heavy.
I'm glad you brought up short and heavy.
Well, you brought it up. I didn't bring it up.
Oh. Well, I brought it up, and I'm glad you mentioned it again. Anyway, okay. Short and heavy. Okay. A 1964 tape-recorded telephone conversation between Markham and attorney Mark Lane. Lane says, quote, "What?" And this is right in the 26 volumes, and the audio is on YouTube. Okay. Lane, was he short? Markham, he was short. He was short. Was he stocky? Was he a little on the heavy side? Not too heavy, but a little on the heavy side. Was his hair bushy? Just a little bit bushy. A little bit bushy. That is volume 20, pages 573 to 574, 577 to 578. And like I read to you a few moments earlier, Donnie, he also said short and heavy.
Okay, so let's add a fourth witness now. So now we have Warren Reynolds to Walker, Ted Calloway to Summers, Benavides to Mark Lane, and Helen Markham to Mark Lane. All four of these people saw the same man, and now we have different descriptions on whether the guy was short and heavy or not.
They're not different descriptions.
Sure they are. You've already listed the descriptions that all four people gave, and not one of them matched the other.
I can literally keep on going on these descriptions.
Matt, you could give 8 different descriptions, and it's going to be you could give 8 different witnesses describing the suspect and get 8 different descriptions. Yet you know that all 8 of these people are talking about the same guy. It's irrelevant. The witnesses make mistakes to height, weight, age, hair color.
There's the excuse again,
No, it's not an excuse. It's actually a weak argument. It's a weak argument on your part to pretend like it means anything. It's not an excuse.
These are descriptions by So you want to throw out the words of the eyewitnesses? This is what they describe.
Well, actually, one lady that you're describing says he was short and stocky. It's the same lady that said number 2 was the man I saw shoot the officer.
No.
Gentlemen, if I'm going to say something, it's kind of becoming a circular argument now.
All right.
No, I can keep on going with these descriptions. Mary Brock, she told the FBI that the killer was 30, but again, Oswald was 24. Patterson, he told the FBI that he was 30. Lewis said that the guy was 30. Again, Oswald was 24. Virginia Davis told the FBI that the killer wore blue jeans. Oswald wasn't wearing blue jeans. Again, I can literally stop and not go on. All you're
doing is proving my case.
I'm not proving your case. Nope.
Yes, you are. Every witness saw the same guy, and they're describing him differently. Are you aware, Matt? Are you aware that Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis were standing right beside each other at the screen door, looking out their front yard, watching the man cut across their yard, holding a revolver in his hand? One said the coat was black. One said it was light colored in nature. Are you aware that they were looking at the same guy?
Yes.
Okay, so how can two witnesses be looking at the same guy when they're standing right beside each other and be that far apart on the description of the jacket itself? They can certainly be far apart and still be talking about the same guy when it comes to height, weight, hair color, age, and things like that.
Yes.
It's a moot point. It means absolutely nothing, and it's a weak argument on your part.
Yes, so that's like the one exception, because all the witnesses said that the killer was wearing a light jacket, but she's the only one who said it was dark. So that's like the one exception where she describes it differently. But yeah, all these descriptions I gave you from eyewitness testimony, affidavits, everything, day one descriptions point to a killer other than Oswald.
No, they don't. It just points to people describing him differently.
Yep.
It points to people. It points to witnesses describing him differently.
Well, then we have to throw out all the eyewitness.
I would like you to address something. I would like you to address something which you haven't really. How do Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis look at the exact same man? One says it's light colored, the other one says it's black jacket. How does that happen?
I just told you.
Is it possible for witnesses to be mistaken about descriptions?
I just told you. We just talked about it.
What did you tell me? What did you tell me regarding those two ladies?
I said that's the one. That's like the one exception here, because.
But you're ignoring my point, Matt. You're ignoring my point. These two ladies were standing right beside each other. One said it was black. One said it was light. It's the same jacket. That happens. It doesn't mean anything. They weren't talking about two different men. One of them was wearing a black jacket. One of them was wearing a light colored jacket. No, they were talking about the same guy. They were standing. They probably were touching shoulders, looking out that screen door at him. One said it was a black jacket. One said it was light colored. It happens. They're talking about the exact same guy. It happens. Witnesses mess that stuff up. It means nothing. And I'm telling you again, your argument is weak to rely on this as one of your selling points.
Are you done?
I want you to address how two women. You haven't yet. No, you haven't. You have not. Addressed it. You've acknowledged that I said it, but you haven't.
Did I address it? Chris, did I address it? I addressed them.
I mean, guys, this is really going circular. Me sitting here listening to it. As far as the jacket goes, as far as the eyewitnesses.
Okay, well, we can move on then. We can move on. I've made my point.
Okay, all I got to say is that I read descriptions of the killer. I could literally keep on going if you want, but we'll stop it here.
You've read descriptions that are different.
Let me finish.
You've read descriptions that are different from one to the next, all of the same guy.
Finish, brother, if I can finish. Okay. Again, to close this topic off, I listed all of the descriptions that the witnesses described the killer, and they do not match Oswald. Okay? And you're saying, well, witnesses can be wrong. That's true. That's true. Just like how you said. One said that the killer was wearing a dark jacket, and one said he was wearing a light jacket. But that's the one exception right there, because as I said, I'll repeat it again. She was the only one who said that the killer was wearing a dark jacket. So that's like the one exception, because.
But again, you're not addressing the point. Matt, you're not addressing the point of that exception. The point is the two women were standing beside each other.
The descriptions of day one descriptions. That's the topic. So if I could finish my summation. If we go by your logic, we have to disregard all the witness testimony, because I just listed you all the witness testimony.
My logic, no. My logic is not that we have to dismiss the witness testimony. My logic is that two witnesses can look at the same man in the same jacket and describe it completely different.
I just described that 2 times. I just explained that. I just talked about that.
I'm ready to move on to the next.
Okay, topic. Yeah. Okay, so to close this off in one sentence, yeah, all these descriptions I gave do not match Oswald. I can literally go on. Next topic.
To close this off in one sentence, it's a weak argument to rely on such a thing.
I just read you the testimony.
It means absolutely nothing.
Bill Brown.
Of the people who were there, I listed you these people were there. I did describe.
Barbara Davis and Virginia Davis were there. The jacket was different colors.
We talked about that.
Okay, gentlemen. Next topic's going to go to Bill Brown, the shooting at 1:15.
All right. Well, basically, when the shots rang out, Mary Wright, for example, she said she called the police immediately. She told this to George and Patricia Nash. Her word, immediately. Barbara Davis heard the shots. She saw the man, cutting across her front yard, unloading a gun, and she heard Markham screaming. She saw the police car and immediately went inside and phoned the police operator to report the shooting to the police. This is in her affidavit. She said immediately. L.J. Lewis was at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company. Now he's a block south of the shooting scene. They hear the shots. He saw the gunman run south on Patton, and he goes and calls the police. Murray Jackson was the dispatcher on Channel 1, and he received the alert from the, quote, citizen using the police radio. Now, this is T.F. Boley at 1:17. And Jackson was told that a policeman had been shot on 10th Street between Marcellus and Beckley. First thing Jackson does, he calls out. You can look this up on the police tapes, on the transcripts. The first thing Jackson does, he calls out for 78. Now, 78 was Tippit's call number. All right. So Jackson is then informed that it's car number 10, and he calls out for 78 two more times. And since we know that Mary Wright and Barbara Davis called the police immediately, and L.J. Lewis called the police almost immediately, and we know that Murray Jackson was unaware of the shooting until he received the alert from T.F. Boley at 1:17, it's obvious that Wright, Davis, and Lewis phoned in the shooting at a point in time just before T.F. Boley did. All right. So T.F. Boley, if these three witnesses, if they had called in the shooting much earlier, then Jackson would have already been aware of the shooting by the time Boley reported it to him. But we know Jackson was not aware of the shooting by the time Boley reported it to him over the police radio. All right. And Domingo Benavides says he sat there, after the killer went around the corner, he sat there for a second or two, and then he got out to try to notify the police operator. Well, he begins keying the mic at 1:15. So he waits for the killer to go around the corner of the house there on 10th and Patton, which is the Davis house. He sits there for a second or two. This is what he told Eddie Barker in the Warren Report in 1967, the TV show for CBS. And he says, I sat there for a second or two, and then he got out, went over to the body, and then he gets on the mic. Now, he begins keying the mic at 1:15. So he does not say he sat there for 7 minutes, which is what has to happen if the shooting occurred at 1:08 or some absurd timeline that a lot of conspiracy advocates like to come up with. Ted Calloway said he heard the shots, and he ran to the sidewalk on Patton, looked up the street. He saw William Scoggins hiding, behind his cab, and he saw Oswald jump the hedges there at the corner of the Davis yard and cross Patton and make his way south on Patton towards Calloway's position. And this is when Calloway hollers out. Calloway testified that Oswald was running and he was holding a gun, and then he saw Oswald head west on Jefferson. So Calloway stood there at his position on the sidewalk, and he saw Oswald travel the complete length of that one block down Patton from 10th to Jefferson, and then he saw Oswald head west on Jefferson. And then Calloway then made a good hard run. That's his words, a good hard run up to the corner of 10th and Patton. He noticed the patrol car. He went over to it, and he saw Tippit lying dead in the street. And he basically helps load the body in the ambulance, and then he grabs the mic to report the shooting. So to recap, he hears this. This is Ted Calloway. He hears the shots. He runs to the sidewalk, watches the gunman run south on Patton, sees the gunman head west on Jefferson, and then he runs 2/3 of a block up to the scene, helps load the body, and reports the shooting to the dispatcher. Now, how much time passes from the time that Calloway hears the shots to the time he reports it on the police radio? Well, let's say it takes 2 minutes from the time that Oswald shoots Tippit to the time that he turns the corner onto Jefferson and begins heading west. Let's say it takes 2 minutes. It's a little over a block, and Oswald was running. And let's say it takes Calloway 1 minute to make his good hard run from his spot on the sidewalk on Patton up to the patrol car. And if all this is accurate, reasonably accurate, then Calloway's at the patrol car 3 minutes after the shots rang out. Let's add a minute for error, which, by the way, helps the conspiracy timeline, not mine. Let's add 1 minute for error, and we have Calloway at the patrol car using the police radio 4 minutes after the shots. And here's the thing. Calloway's report to the police dispatcher using Tippit's patrol car radio was at 1:19 to 1:20. Shooting took place 1:14 to 1:15.
Matt?
I'm here.
Do you agree with that, Matt? We were talking on the phone about a week and a half ago, and you kind of acknowledged at least that it's possible that the shooting could have taken place at 1:14, right?
Even if it, again, we're going back to the time.
I'm not talking about whether the shooter was Oswald. I'm just asking if it's possible the shooting took place at 1:14.
Yes, of course it's possible.
Okay. Then I'm ready. I'm ready for the next topic. Then that's good enough for me.
No, I can respond to that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to respond.
Well, we were trying to give you to respond. You didn't say anything. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm here. Okay. So yes, there is evidence that several minutes elapsed, and I gave some of the evidence last time in round one, but I since then I found some more. Okay, so as you mentioned, the closest witness, Donnie Benavides, he said that he stayed crouched down in his truck for, quote, a few minutes because he was afraid the man was going to come back and do more shooting. But as I said last time, let's throw him out. We still have a lot more evidence. Okay, Mrs. Barbara Davis, she testified that she called the police, went to Tippett's body, and stayed with it for 5 minutes. That's volume 3, page 345. Okay? Her sister-in-law, Virginia Davis, she told the FBI that she went to Tippett's body after Barbara called the police and, quote, a few minutes later after that. That's a CD 630F. Harold Russell, he told the FBI that after watching the killer run away, he walked 2 blocks to the crime scene, had a couple conversations with bystanders, and then, quote, 5 minutes later, the police arrived. That's volume 21, page 383. And then we have Jim Burt. He said that he and Bill Smith immediately ran to Tippett's body and, quote, stood there a few minutes. They then went down Patton Avenue to, of course, look for the killer. They searched the alley, of course. And then when they came back, the ambulance hadn't arrived yet. Okay, and you mentioned Calloway's actions indicate that, just a few minutes, that just, not much time passed at all. But the guy right next to him, Sam Ginyard, he testified that he and Ted Calloway, after watching the killer flee, went to the crime scene and, quote, stood there a while until the ambulance arrived. That's volume 7, page 398. So, yes, there is a 5 or 6 minutes that the body laid in the street, and that that's important because it really narrows Oswald's time to get there, and it narrows his time to get there. It does.
I just told you that Calloway is making his report to the police dispatcher 3 to 4 minutes after hearing the shots, and that report is made at 1:19 to 1:20.
Yeah, everyone agrees on that.
Okay, so then you have the shooting at what, 1:15?
Yeah, 109 to 114. Yeah.
Okay, so no, that's not 109. Then you have Calloway. Then you have it taken Calloway 10 minutes to get on Tippett's patrol car radio after hearing the shots.
He said
it didn't take him 10 minutes.
The guy next to him said that we stood there a while until the ambulance. We stood there a while. Is 10 minutes?
You're speaking in general terms that are figures of speeches.
Is potential could 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes be? We stood there a while. Is that what we stood there a while could mean? Yes, but again, I just gave you all this evidence.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense for a police officer's body to be lying in the street for 7, 8, 9 minutes before someone decides to, 1, get on the patrol car radio to report it in, or 2, pick up their damn phone and call the operator to call the police to report the shooting. There's no way that these people waited. And I told you already.
I just gave you the evidence.
Mary Wright told Georgia Patricia Nash she did it immediately.
Yeah.
Barbara Davis said she went inside after Oswald cut across the yard and immediately called the police.
Yeah.
Not 7, 8, 9 minutes later.
Wait, you said, what was that second part you said?
Barbara Davis heard the shots, saw Oswald cutting across the yard, unloading the gun. She heard Markham screaming.
Yep.
She called the police car, and then she immediately went inside and called the operator. This is in her affidavit.
What are you leaving out there? What are you not telling the listeners?
You tell me.
As I just said, she testified. She called the police. How long does that take? 2 minutes? 1 minute?
To call the police?
Yeah.
15 seconds?
And to call the police and tell them what happened.
25 seconds?
20. Okay. Okay, so as I said, she testified. She called the police. Let's just say a minute, okay? Went to Tippit's body.
I'm not just going to say a minute. It doesn't take but a half a minute to call the police and tell them.
Hypothetical. How do we know she got through right away?
Your entire case is hypothetical. You got multiple witnesses describing the guy the same. Differently, it's the same guy.
I read you the testimony, how she testified she called the police, went to Tippit's body, and stayed with it for, quote, 5 minutes. Yes, I just gave you that's testimony, volume 3, page 345, and all the other people I mentioned.
Matt, since we know that Mary Wright and Barbara Davis called the police immediately,
yeah,
and we know that Murray Jackson was unaware of the shooting until he received the alert from Boley on the police radio at 1:17, it's obvious that Wright and Davis called the police just before Boley got on the radio to report the shooting.
Do you know how quickly they were connected they got through? Until they got through?
I'm not going to sit here and let you tell me that it took 7 or 8 or 9 minutes for that to happen.
I'm not saying it took 7, 8, or 9 minutes.
Well, why do you think it would have taken longer than 30 seconds?
Okay, so what we're talking about is, okay, let's say 30 seconds. Let's say she called the police, 30 seconds, went to Tippit's body, that takes 30 seconds, and stayed with it for 5 minutes. So that's 6 minutes. And the ambulance hasn't even arrived yet.
The ambulance got there, Matt, at 1:19. She didn't stay there for 6 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever she said. It was a figure of speech.
No one disagrees that it was 118, 119. I just gave you all the evidence that he lied in the street for several minutes. And that narrows Oswald's time to walk there, as we said in our first debate.
You haven't addressed the fact that Callaway is reporting the shooting 3 to 4 minutes after the shots rang out. And he did this at 1:19 to 1:20.
So all we know is it was at 1:19, 1:20.
That Callaway made his report on Tippit's radio, correct?
And the guy next to him, as I said, I keep having to repeat myself, Sam Gignon.
I'm not talking about, see, you're talking about you're talking about a figure of speech. I'm talking about the police case.
Figure of speech. See, every time I give evidence, Bill says, "Oh, it's a figure of speech," or witnesses aren't reliable.
Hey, Matt, if you would show up with something besides figure of speeches, then I wouldn't have to say it.
Sworn testimony. Again, he said, quote.
It doesn't matter whether it's a sworn testimony. It's still a figure of speech. People give figure of speeches when they're testifying.
Quote, we stood there a while until the ambulance arrived. Volume 7, page 398.
What does a while mean? How do you know what a while means to Ginier, to whoever it was that you're quoting right now? How do you know what a while means?
Well, kind of getting circular again.
It's not circular, Chris. It's not circular. Yep. We're talking about the evidence.
You repeat it, but you keep repeating the same thing over and over and over.
Who?
Listen to it.
Who?
Well, the bottom line is, just to get this moving on, the bottom line is that Ted Callaway made his report on the police radio 1:19 to 1:20, and I just described for you his actions, and it took him no more than 3 to 4 minutes to do all that. Certainly didn't take 9 minutes or 10 minutes even for the shooting to occur too early for Oswald to have been there. Callaway alone tells you the shooting took place about, I'm not saying he says this literally, but Callaway's actions alone tell you the shooting took place 1:15-ish. Callaway didn't say I hung around for 10 minutes before I got on the radio. He tells you what he did.
Sam,
and all you got to do is play it out in your head.
The guy read, we stood there a while. We stood there a while until the ambulance.
Again with your figure of speeches. Stop using figure of speeches. I'm using actual literal police tape timelines.
I am reading to you sworn testimony. Do you not like testimony?
Because it's sworn testimony doesn't mean it's still not a figure of speech. A while. You're saying he stood there a while. I'm telling you, Callaway was on the police tape at 1:19.
Guys,